Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP leagues, even daily fantasy football leagues. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back again for another episode of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Austin, here to bring you some more fantasy football coverage. I know you guys, some of y'all can watch this live. I'm not sure if it's on YouTube or not, but this is going to be the Patreon segment. We're going to give you two Patreon segments today. First, I'm just going to be talking some top performers that I'd like to see in Week 4. The Week 4 matchups that we saw on Sunday. I'll probably be talking about guys like that. And then on the second half, we're going to be talking about the top waiver performers, guys who are available in, standard 12-team leagues to grab off the waiver wire. We're going to be talking about some guys that did really good in Week 4 and who I think you could possibly be picking up to your team that would help your team perform a little bit better, even if the bench just got a little bit deeper. We're just looking to improve, guys. So without further ado, make sure you guys like and subscribe, all that stuff. Brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. That is our sponsor. Thank you for letting me be a podcast host, guys. I'm so excited about it, man. Want to get into these guys that had really big days, though, first, before we get into the waiver, because I know that's what you guys are really ultimately looking for, a guy to help your team get a little bit better. But let's talk about some guys that have really good days. And want to start with a guy who was a bit surprising this week, someone who hasn't really done much throughout the season yet, and that is Josh Jacobs. Finally had, a good day fantasy-wise after not eclipsing over 11 points yet this season, which is terrible. This week, Week 4, obviously going up against this pretty bad Chargers defense. I do believe that they lost this game, though, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yep, Chargers won 24-17 in this one, but Josh Jacobs put a pretty healthy performance up. 17 carries for 58 yards and the touchdown. Also added in 8 receptions for 81 yards. Totaled up to 27.9 fantasy points. Looking like the Josh Jacobs that we saw last year, and I'm sure a lot of fantasy owners are happy about that. That was also his first touchdown of the season that he recorded in Week 4. Maybe he just needed some time to get going because the volume is absolutely there. Week 1, 19 carries. Week 2, only 9 carries playing against Buffalo, and I think they got beat bad that time, but still contributed in the receiving category, 5 receptions for 51 yards. Definitely very good. Week 3, 17 carries, and then Week 4, 17 carries also. So it doesn't look like the Raiders are going away from Josh Jacobs by any means. Obviously, Devontae Adams is going to be their guy to rely on for really big plays, but I think Josh Jacobs is technically like the backbone of this Raiders offense, and they're going to go as he goes. So I hope we can see more from Josh Jacobs. He had a pretty good day. How about Nico Collins sliding in as the fifth leader in total fantasy points in Week 4? 35.8 fantasy points is definitely going to get it done. And that coming off a week where I put him in my loser category last week for only having 2 receptions for 34 yards, comes back and drops a 35 bomb on the Pittsburgh Steelers. 7 receptions, 168 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is really crazy to see. I thought that Stroud was kind of favoring Tank Dell, and I thought he was just going to start favoring him. But obviously Stroud, or Tank Dell, is very small, whereas, Nico Collins, like a 6'4", jump out of the gym type guy, probably could have played in the NBA with those physicals. We'll see what Tank Dell did this week. Yeah, Tank Dell, wow. 1 reception for 16 yards after his 2 20-point fantasy weeks. So maybe a bit of parity for this Houston team. and, who Stroud's favorite target's going to be on a week-to-week basis. But at the end of the day, I think Nico Collins is just much more of a reliable target rather than Tank Dell, being that he's just so small. But yeah, that's definitely interesting. Love to see Nico Collins, former Michigan wide receiver, getting in on the action and having a good day. I talked about Stephon Diggs on the podcast. That was a really big day from him too, 36.5 fantasy points. How about Lamar Jackson? I feel like Lamar Jackson doesn't get enough love these days, man. Currently quarterback 3. I feel like a lot of people were not, sticking with him through week 1, and then week 2 he gave us a 20. Week 3 and 4 he is up the rushing acumen to give us 28 fantasy points in both weeks 3 and 4. So that's definitely amazing. 14 rushes for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 3, and then 9 rushes for 27 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 4. I'm sure Gus Edwards and Justice Hill owners are not happy about that by any means, but man, this dude had an absolute day. Lamar Jackson, 186 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, and then the 2 touchdowns on the ground too. What was the final score of this one? Sheesh, 28-3. Doesn't look like Deshaun Watson should have been on the losers category today. I definitely should have talked about him. Let's talk about one more guy who I really, really like just because he popped up here, and that's going to be Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams obviously having an amazing season, had one, little mishap type week in week 3 versus the Cincinnati Bengals, which is really interesting because I thought that he was going to be scheduled for a big day on prime time for that one. Obviously, he's a young guy, so the consistency might not be all the way there, but he's obviously very talented. Week 4 against a pretty decent Colts defense, and obviously Shaq Leonard, who I think is probably the best linebacker in the league. Bobby Wagner just had 17 tackles, though, so maybe he's making a case. Also, like Foyesade Olukun from the Jaguars. But besides the point, Kyren Williams going up against Shaq Leonard in that defense, 25 carries, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that matchup. 3 receptions for 24 yards, too. It seems like he can do it a little bit through the air. I just like what I see from him. He has a lot of burst, and he's hungry for those touchdowns, and he's eating a lot of them. He currently already has 5 touchdowns through 4 weeks. Going to be a dangerous test here in week 5, though, because he's going to be going up against PFF's number 1 rated run defense, the Philadelphia Eagles. So definitely some interesting developments. Let's take a quick break. When I come back, let's talk about the top waiver performers and people who in these 12-team-ish leagues, guys that you'll be able to pick up, come Wednesday morning. So, yeah, come back. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. My name is Austin. GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast right here. Let's go through the waiver wire. I said that we were going to go through the waiver wire, talk about top performers on the waiver wire, and that is exactly what I intend to do right here, right now. And want to start off with a guy who had a very surprising, sneaky good day, and that is Michael Wilson on the Arizona Cardinals. Currently rostered in 1.4% of leagues. Dropped a bomb on this 49ers defense despite an embarrassing loss that they put up, but that was to be expected. Had 7 receptions for 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, who is this guy? I had no clue who this guy was, so I had to do a little bit of research on him. Turns out he was their 3rd-round pick this year. He is a rookie out of Stanford, and he just has a really bad injury history. Really struggled with injuries through the past 3 seasons, including this one. Through the last 3 seasons, not including this one, through the last 3 seasons, only played 14 games total at Stanford. I was looking at his game logs. I was like, why has he not played any games? Not very impressive college stats, obviously. Pretty standard at best, but somehow made it as a 3rd-round pick in the NFL. So kind of abnormal, something to see here. Very weird. Even in week 2, though, he showed and proved that he can do a little bit at least. Caught both of his targets for 86 yards. So I think that probably got him the nod to get a little bit more playing time in this week 4 matchup versus, a really, really good defense with the 49ers. Obviously have multiple probably all pros at like multiple positions. Safety for sure with Hufanga, middle linebacker Fred Warner. Charvarius Ward is going to be somewhere around there. Definitely some dogs over there. And Michael Wilson found a way to do something, which I really like. Apparently the coach likes him too. He said that coming into camp that he just saw Michael Wilson. He just looked different. Like he just looked like a guy who was really explosive, really fast. So I love to hear that the coach likes him. 86 yards in week 3, came back 76 yards and 2 touchdowns. Definitely worthy of at least a look on your roster. Maybe we just need to see a little bit more. His target share is definitely not there. 4 targets week 1, 3 targets week 2, 2 targets with the 86 yards in week 3, and then picked up 7 targets in week 4, caught all 7 of them. Very, very interesting. Might as well talk about his quarterback that gets him the ball. Josh Dobbs rostered in 2.1% of ESPN leagues and currently ranked as quarterback number 16 in fantasy football right now, so definitely not too bad. He's put up multiple 20-point games at this point and just had a really solid performance against, like I said, a very good 49ers team with all pros everywhere. Went 28 for 41, 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. What I like about him the most is that he does have that ability to run and get out of the pocket, evade those slower D linemen that he faces. Went for 12 carries, 48 yards. Also had 55 yards on the ground last week. So, better than a lot of the running backs that we have on our team currently. I know a lot of you guys are probably struggling at running back, and Josh Dobbs over here putting up 50 yards on the ground per game. Not that difficult, guys. Dude doesn't even know the offense yet, most likely. But I think Josh Dobbs, if you're in a bad spot at quarterback, could be a useful weapon. Also really like CJ Stroud too on the Texans. Very, very good player and has been going absolutely crazy. 20-point performances in the last 3 weeks from CJ Stroud. Only 1 pick through his last 3 weeks too. 6 to 1 touchdown. 0 picks through the season. I saw a fumble. He does have 2 fumbles, but 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions for CJ Stroud this far throughout the season. Has played against a pretty decent Pittsburgh defense and pretty decent Indianapolis Colts defense too, and kind of just shredded them all up. He's thrown for 300 yards already twice in weeks 2 and 4. If you are struggling at quarterback and CJ Stroud is out there, there's no reason you should be struggling at quarterback anymore. He is good. It is not a question, and he's currently the leader for Rookie of the Year candidate too. Currently ranked at QB 10. But I know you guys are looking for flexes, so let's look into some flex guys that we can see may have a chance to grow their role or improve. One guy I did see out there was Jaleel McLaughlin. Jaleel McLaughlin got a chance against the Bears. Obviously, Bears very bad defense, so don't want to look into this too much. But put up 100 yards from scrimmage, and when I saw his highlights and his stuff he was doing on Sunday, he was definitely looking explosive and fast. Even before Javonte Williams got injured in this Week 4 matchup, Jaleel was a little bit a part of this offense with 5 carries in Week 3. Then Williams got sidelined, and it led to 10 touches for Jaleel McLaughlin. He definitely made the most of it with the 19.4 fantasy points. Don't know if I would take him, but if his role increases, I do like his speed and his burst, and don't think he's the worst guy to go after. He put up 19.4 fantasy points is definitely not bad. Another guy who has been pretty good, pretty good as in a waiver wire guy who's been pretty good, is this guy Nick Westbrook-Akine. He just is grabbing like a decent amount of targets in this Titans offense. Seems like he's technically the wide receiver number 3 for them, but this week 5 receptions for 51 yards and a touchdown, 16 fantasy points. Definitely still don't like him more than like Treylon Burks or DeAndre Hopkins, so I would most likely stay away from that guy. But he had a pretty impressive Week 4 for sure. It's kind of crazy. It's literally like 10 guys here that had over 15 points or like right at 15 points, and then it just drops off immediately. The waiver wire is definitely thin right now, guys, but there is value to be had for sure. If you're looking at tight end, let's look at some tight ends. Johnny Smith had a really good day, 15 points. Definitely monitor him if his role ever increases, over Kyle Pitts, which I don't know why it would. He's just a really good athlete, though, somebody that I like. Cade Otton did catch a touchdown this week. I saw him catch one, but he only went 3 receptions for 13 yards and the touchdown. So that was the reason his fantasy points were there. But he seems like a red zone threat for those Buccaneers, so probably get him a good price for like DFS, stuff like that. Running back wise, literally Jaleel McLaughlin, 19.4 points. The next guy on the waiver wire for me at least is 7.7 points from Ronnie Rivers. So right now, unless there's an injury to one of these number ones in the running back category, seems like you're going to have to get your running backs via trade, and that's about the only way that you're going to be able to do it. I was blessed enough to be able to grab Devon Achane last week because I had the worst fantasy. I was number 1 on the waiver order because I had lost. And guys, I just came back with the Seahawks defense closing me out. Pick 6, Danny Dimes, 99 yards to the house. I was electric just a couple minutes ago when that happened. That was absolutely crazy. I'll give you guys one more guy who I don't think is the worst option, but definitely not the best option to grab. He would be the first guy that I would grab here, probably even over Michael Wilson, who just had even better day than him. But Curtis Samuel has quietly been doing some stuff for the Washington Commanders. Coming into this week, I do believe that he was the leading receiver for them and just had been like putting out some solid performances. 54 yards Week 1, 11 fantasy points. Week 2 kind of fell off. But then Week 3 came back with 54 more yards, 8.4 fantasy points. This week against Philadelphia, who, not amazing coverage. They're more known for like their D-line and stuff like that. 7 receptions for 51 yards on 8 targets. He was the leader in receiving yards before this game. Terry McLaurin, I think, did take that after this game, but he did put up his fantasy season high with 18.2 fantasy points. Had a rushing touchdown, and that was pretty much what sealed the deal for that. I think he's definitely involved in that offense and definitely is going to get his touches. He's an explosive athlete and a really good vet in the game. So possibly somebody to look out for is Curtis Samuel. Guys, if there are no questions or anything like that, I'm going to get out of here. But make sure you are back at 7 p.m. Mountain Time for tomorrow's episode. I think we're going to be talking about quarterback and tight end winners and losers. So have a good rest of your night, guys. And